So what very quickly can be the mitigates to the domestic constraints in health information systems as they relate to the subject under consideration in today's conference. And I think it's critical to establish and to make investments in establishing an apex institutional arrangement to strengthen data and information norms and to create the right and appropriate intersectoral linkages, both domestically, regionally, and globally, to ensure that data is shared and disseminated in a timely and, most importantly, in a transparent manner. Secondly, I think it's important to integrate the piecemeal surveillance activities and develop comprehensive public health surveillance systems consisting of peripheral data collection arms linked to the central system, strategically leveraging technology. In countries where there are no legal systems to mandate notification of priority diseases, the need to do so becomes an imperative, as is the need to regulate laboratory practice. And then, of course, I have consistently made the point about the strategic use of technology in data systems, which to my mind is an extremely important consideration in our countries. Global agencies can help domestic health information system consolidating by giving technical expertise in all respects, including ensuring transparency. They can step up the global alert and response network and assist in addressing fragmentation at a normative level, particularly with respect to the role of various international agencies. They can build capacity in a very targeted manner to step up the capacity of countries to implement the international health regulations. They can, of course, help by augmenting domestic and technical human resource capabilities within epidemic investigation cells, and more broadly assist countries to reconfigure their capacity to conduct locally suited research that can enable them to strengthen their information systems and enable disease security in the larger interest of their populations. When I began my talk, I said that domestic and global information systems is one piece that needs to be strengthened in order to move towards the broader goal of ensuring epidemiological security. But I think this will not be achieved unless the broader health systems constraints and issues within the remit of the political economy of a country are addressed. And I think in line with this, it's very critical to take a very quick snapshot of how health systems are performing in countries of Asia. Barring many countries who have performed extremely well in the health sector, there are many others where health systems performance assessment indicates poor performance. There are three indicators that we use for health systems performance assessment. One of them is fairness in financing. The other is achieving equity in health outcomes, and the third is responsiveness. And if you gauge the performance of many Asian countries, many developing Asian countries by this measure, you will see that they have fared very poorly. If you have access to my slides at this point, and if they are being shown concurrently in tandem with this video, you will be able to see a number of slides that can be projected on the screen from my country, which can show you how poorly the country performs with respect to all these three health systems endpoints. And unfortunately, the time limit will not allow me to go into the details of that. I have recently authored a publication by the name of Choked Pipes Reforming Pakistan's Mixed Health System, which gives a consolidated roadmap for addressing these systemic issues. The basis for the reform agenda that has been articulated in this book has actually been published in a publication which has come out in the WHO Bulletin in its January issues. The publication describes the mixed health system syndrome, a syndrome, a phenomena in which there are systemic constraints in a health system where public provision of services coexists with market provision of services, and where a triad of determinants systemically undermines the quality and equity outcomes of a health system. And I've described how poor resourcing of a public system interacts with an unregulated role of the private sector in the presence of lack of overall transparency and governance. And I hope that the organizers will be able to put up that slide to allow you to see how the three interact together to systemically undermine the quality and equity objectives of a health system. In the book entitled Choke Pipes, I have articulated a reform agenda. The reform agenda has three components. One of them is reform of overall governance. I'm strongly of the opinion that unless there's macroeconomic reform that enables growth, pro-poor growth, which accrues benefits to populations, unless there is broader-based fiscal reform that increase the fiscal space for health allocations, unless there's overall reform of governance to enable efficiency and transparency, health systems reform in isolation will have very little impact. And therefore, the first stem of reform for a mixed health system that I advocate for centers on reform of overall governance. And my sense is that although this reform agenda has been articulated for Pakistan, it is very relevant to the other countries, to the other developing countries of Asia. The second stem of reform centers on social sector reform, where many areas have been outlined. And the third area of reform relates to reform of health systems per se, where 5 areas of focus have been identified. And again, the slides, which I hope will be circulated to you, outline this in bullet points. I have attempted to outline certain steps for policy reform in mixed health systems. I have drawn upon an analysis of legislative norms within the country to outline how that policy reform could be supported by a legislative agenda. And then through a series of analyses, I have attempted to articulate what imperatives will that policy and legislative reform have for institutional restructuring within the country in terms of reconfiguring its role and stepping up its capabilities. I have subsequently articulated a phase-wise implementation agenda for phasing out that reform over a period of time, where step 1 centers on developing a national consensus on reform and increasing public financing, where step 2 talks about embracing the health information system, which is a discussion extremely relevant to the subject that you are focusing on today. Step 2 also focuses on pulling a thread through existing evidence. Step 3 has a number of concrete recommendations with regard to strengthening institutions, honing norms, and mainstreaming technology. Step 4 is about prototyping alternative service delivery arrangements, and step 5 is about scale up for holistic reform. I hope that this modest contribution would be relevant to other developing countries of Asia, particularly in terms of galvanizing the thought process towards reforming their health systems holistically. In my opinion, reform of health systems is absolutely critical to mitigating some of the fundamental systemic problems that exist within health systems today. And these fundamental systemic constraints are critical to ensuring disease security, which is the subject that you have very admirably that you're very admirably focusing on today. Thank you for this opportunity, and my apologies once again for not being able to be with you today. Take care.